So what can you tell us about where we pick up then? Is it a direct pickup in season 4?
Yeah, like we pretty much pick up where we left off, and all the things that are still in the air are still there for us. So, everyone knows about the impending doom, the 6 months. Not everyone. I mean, Bellamy and Clarke have that, but that's the biggest kind of threat in the forefront. Obviously, there's still a lot of questions to be answered in Polis, and everyone's coming down off the chip high. So, there's the fallout from that people have to deal with. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward continuation of the story from last season. So, yeah.
How were Bellamy's decisions from last season, where he followed Pike and made some really big choices? How are those continuing to affect him in the upcoming season?
I mean, I think all the decisions he's made since season 1 really hang over his head. So it's just kind of like another addition to the amount of guilt and remorse that he has. So yeah, he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders, and he's obviously carrying that around, but has to find a way to be useful again and be helpful to those around him that he loves. So it's going to be dealt with, and we're constantly dealing with all that kind of stuff. The culling of the 500 and Mount Weather and all that. It doesn't just go away. That's the great thing about this show, is that I get to carry around those demons forever. But yeah, that's definitely prevalent this season.
Every season brings a new group of interactions for the characters. Who does Bellamy get to interact with the most this year?
I think you'll see a lot of Bellamy and Kane's relationship, which is really great for me. I mean, I love working with Ian. Yeah, we have a lot of fun. Yeah, he's kind of like, I guess, adopted me in a way as his son, or vice versa. Maybe I'm the father figure between the two of us. Yeah, so there's a lot of that stuff, like a lot of Kane and Bellamy, and you'll see that. And obviously, the relationship with Octavia is always something that has to be addressed and readdressed constantly. It's a ever-evolving relationship. Clarke and Bellamy will, always have their differences, but try and work together. That's kind of, there's a return of like the adventure squad of the younger kids as well, which is a lot of fun as well. So yeah, this season I've got to kind of spread myself around a lot and work with a lot of different people, which is nice.
Going off on that, the last moment of the season 3 finale, Octavia killed Pike. It was pretty shocking. How is Bellamy going to be reacting to that? How's that going to change their relationship?
I always thought about that, like, because she has killed Pike in front of everyone and outside of wartime, whether there's any repercussions for that. I think it's more of a personal thing for her and what she's going through. I don't think Bellamy had like such an emotional tie to Pike at that point. He had betrayed him already, or turned him over. Whichever way you look at it, there's always different perspectives on how you see his relationship with Pike, and a lot of people think that Pike was a bad influence, and I'm still on the fence of that. So yeah, I mean, it's more of a concern for her well-being as opposed to the act of murder. That's a thing that is the questioning factor there, I think, for Bellamy.
Can you talk about the power vacuum, the fact that now Pike's dead, and who's kind of going to be in charge of whatever remains of
Yeah, I kind of like wondered about that too, and the power vacuum, I guess, of the commander position and who's going to step into that, and that's all addressed, and also like the relevance of the Chancellor, and the obvious person who has led us for so long outside of the whole whatever position is bestowed upon you has always been Clarke in a way. There's a lot of her decisions that get followed through and not necessarily the Chancellor's. I guess Pike was quite the exception. But yeah, the power situation within Sky Crew and the rest of the 13 clans all starts to meld in a way. But yeah, that's definitely up for grabs. So, yeah.
Talk about at the end of last season we found out that the environment and the Earth in general is perhaps coming to an end. How much that weighs in in the early episodes?
Oh, it weighs in quite a lot. It's a huge factor throughout this season. It's this impending doom that we all have to either figure out how to address that. And whether you decide to find a way to get through it or find solutions to live through it, or whether you kind of start making a bucket list and just kind of decide to let it wash over you, I guess, in a literal sense. Yeah. So yeah, it's there's that I guess existential dilemma of whether we deserve to survive, and whether it's just should we live it the rest of our lives hedonistically, with whatever we have left. So it's definitely the clock that is ticking throughout the season.
Can you tease where Bellamy falls on that spectrum at all?
I mean, it changes every day. He's a very interesting character this season, and he always has been. He's very, complex, and sometimes, the writers like to put me in positions where I don't necessarily agree, or I agree wholeheartedly, and then that's the beauty of it. He kind of is a metronome in that sense, where he's back and forth. So I don't think there's a real straightforward answer to that. Which is nice for me to play, but it's also very challenging. But like most people, he changes his mind, and that's okay. But yeah, I don't think there's any one way that he leans either. Doesn't go either way. Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see. I'm still finding out myself. So yeah.
With this ticking clock approaching, is it going to cause some more alliances to be created that we might not have ever expected?
I think this show loves to pair groups of characters together that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So, ticking clock or not, you always see these couplings and these groups that go out that you wouldn't necessarily imagine being friendly or aggressive or whatever it is. So, regardless, I mean, the ticking clock obviously is one of the catalysts to putting these groups together, but there's a whole heap of different groups that you don't usually see, and that's what I think the writing team really like to explore, is putting characters that you wouldn't expect together.
Speaking of characters you wouldn't expect together, how is Bellamy and Roan, after considering what they went through in season 3, what's their relationship like in season 4?
Yeah, what did we go through in season 3? I mean, I think that in a way that they're both kind of similar, and both would fight for their people. I mean, he was exiled, and he kind of... I mean, the one thing about Rowan that I was really surprised about is how quickly he picked up the AI story. I think we had a scene like in a prison cell over here, and Clarke came in and went, "Okay, so it takes over your body." He's like, yeah, I get it. What do we need to do? So, I mean, maybe Rowan's like a wee bit brighter than Bellamy. But, I mean, they're kind of these two gruff, like, alpha dogs that kind of mope around and do their thing and do their dirty work. So, there's some parallels between the two of them, and there's some major differences between the two of them. But that's another partnership that you might see spring up. I mean, Zach and I are good friends anyway, so I feel like I've spent a lot of time with him. Maybe not on screen, but definitely off screen. So maybe they're melding into each other. Yeah.
What's the first challenge that they're going to have to face in the premiere episode?
Well, I think when there's a whole bunch of people that have turned up to Polis under the guidance of Ali. So already there, once everyone is out of it, you've ended up with a whole bunch of clans, people that are brought together by this one idea, it being Ali, that then come out of that, and they have to deal with what they've gone through and the fallout from that. And also, not all clans get along, so there's that immediate place of like waking up and then being like, oh, these are a whole bunch of people I don't really know I'll get along with, and how do you confront that situation? So that's something that comes about. But obviously the impending doom is one of those things that you kind of got to get onto pretty quickly, otherwise it might just get out of hand. So that's kind of a pressing factor.
So there are going to be far-reaching consequences to the people that were in the City of Light now that they're out of it?
Yeah, you definitely get to see the fallout side story of that, and how that affects everyone. And it affects everyone in a completely different ways, and those people that weren't on the chip as well. But yeah, we always have this discussion about it where everyone's like, well, I thought that was the person for a second. We always have this discussion where, I'm like, yeah, but you guys did all this stuff when you're on the chip and blah, blah, and they're like, they plead the chip, and they're like, we didn't know what we were doing. I'm like, man, that sucks. I wish Bellamy was on the chip and I could get away with everything. But you'll see the fallout from that and the emotional scars that are left by the actions that they did whilst on the chip or under the influence.
last season, Bellamy and Clarke were sort of on separate story arcs and trajectories until they finally started to come together more towards the end. How's their dynamic going to evolve in the early season 4?
I think that like them teaming back up at the end of season 3 is kind of indicative of where you will take off from there. And I guess that's kind of where it is. They obviously, you know, will go on their own journeys, and they both have their own issues they have to deal with and demons they have to fight. But for the most part in the beginning, there is that unity again. But you know, everything's pretty short-lived. Everything that's peaceful is short-lived on the show. So yeah, so just kind of wait and see again. One of those things.
And going off on that, the fans, there's a specific fan group that are really passionate about their like dynamic, especially when they were co-leading together back in earlier seasons.
Yeah.
So how does that, how do you guys view that passionate response even when your storylines are so separate?
I mean, I think it's great that, you know, that people are so passionate about the show and about these two characters in particular. It doesn't necessarily affect me or Eliza when we're performing. You know, we get our scripts and that's what we do, and you know, no one's really like pushing an agenda. And I assume you mean like romantically in that kind of dynamic, or yes. So I mean that's not something that crops up in conversations when we're doing the job. And, you know, you have what's on the page and you try and do it as truthful as you can. And we know whether that's where Jason and the writing team want to take it, then that's their decision. It's not really something that's up to Eliza or I. But you know, if you know, you can't. If people want to ship it, then you know, I'm not going to stop them if they feel passionately about it, and that's great. Yeah.
What can you preview about his relationship with Luna?
With Luna, I mean, I don't really like Bellamy's relationship with Luna. I guess it's something that is very much in development. So yeah, I don't know how much I can tell you in regards to, you know, without destroying or getting fired. So we'll just say it's a work in progress.
Will we see any interaction between Bellamy and Murphy at the beginning of the season? So it's a dynamic that's been really interesting in the past.
Oh yeah, I love working with Richard. We definitely cross paths. We're lucky. The good thing about the start of the season, you know, we're all in Polis, so we're all there. So it was kind of great coming back and starting the season and being like seeing everyone as well, because you know, you don't always get to interact with all the other actors on the show. So yeah, Bellamy and Murphy, you know, they're, I wouldn't say bury the hatchet or anything like that, you know, but we definitely cross paths and, you know, have our words. But yeah, you know, like everyone in this show, like it just becomes so expansive, and you know, I think that Bellamy's MO might be slightly different from Murphy's, so yeah, whether they see eye to eye, that's something we're going to have to wait and see.
It sounds like Octavia is going to be taking kind of a darker turn even from the finale. So can you talk a little bit about how Bellamy's thoughts about Octavia and if they'll be interacting?
Well, I mean, that relationship with Octavia is one that I would like to really see develop into a more adult relationship, as opposed to him berating her or you know, her being, you know, her telling him, you know, you can't tell me what to do or whatever, that kind of back and forth dynamic. And you know, with her taking this darker turn and it being much more of an emotional turn and you know, an outward expression of that, it's something that Bellamy has experienced before as well. So there is a level of understanding there that I think that he expresses, but you know, there's also a level of loss. You know, I don't think that he necessarily wanted that for her, and you know, he says that at the end of season 3, like when they're barricading the door, and he's like, I know what it's like, and I just don't want this for you, and then she makes the choice to kill Pike in the end. So it's, you know, that's also like an indicator to him that she doesn't really need his advice, or doesn't really necessarily listen to his advice anymore. So it's a bit of a blow for him, and I mean, that's, you know, at some point you do have to take a back seat, and with the people you care about, you can't give them the answer, they have to find it themselves. So it's one of those kind of journeys that will take some time, lots of healing, you know, a lot of water under the bridge. Yeah, it's, you know, it's definitely, it takes its toll on both of them. So, yeah.
we know that we're gonna meet more Grounder clans and get more into like the cultures of the Grounder clans this season, so which one were you most excited to explore more?
Well, I mean, it's always like it, because we don't necessarily get a huge amount of background on them, you know, so it's kind of, we learn about them as they come along. You know, I'm sure Jason and the team have reams of information about which clan has what, but you know, for us, or for me, I can't speak for the other cast, but walking in and seeing all their emblems and stuff is probably as close as I got to learning about any of them. Yeah, and you know, there's some in particular we'll get like a good look at, and you know, not all of them are as aggressive as the Ice Nation and take different approaches. You know, I think we've seen Luna's crew and the Ice Nation thus far, and a few ambassadors from the others. But yeah, they all have a different approach to how they live, and you know, it's much like the Ark. You know, we had different factions like the Factory Station and the mechanics and all that kind of stuff, where they all serve their purpose and have different roles. So, you know, it's cool to explore the Grounders version, I guess, of the Ark. I don't know if that's a lesson. Yeah, all right, it's happening, guys.
We have time for one more question. How's Bellamy's love life this season? He always seems to get a love life.
And then everyone dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I think that, yeah, maybe he's like steering away from that, because most people that he does have a relationship with end up either blowing up or, you know, getting impaled by a spear. Cheeky. Anyway, yeah. Love life. I don't know. Is it really worth starting a love life in 6 months to go? It's probably more of like a thing, really. That's just my personal take. You know, I don't necessarily, like, I feel sorry for the guy, you know, because I think he needs that, but whether he actually feels like he deserves it is another question. So, yeah, he's very, he's full of angst and sadness, and, you know, so, yeah, it's always fun to play this guy, you know, 10 hours at work and be like, oh, God. No, it's brilliant, he's great, but in terms of love life, yeah, that's definitely a tricky one for him to even open up to other people is pretty hard, and he struggles to do that with his sister. And you know, I think the relationship with Clarke is one of the ones where he can be open with her and be vulnerable, which doesn't. There's not many people he was like that with at all. So you know, I think that's why people might gravitate towards that, because there's a side of Bellamy that she brings out that doesn't really come out with anyone else. So.